seats immediately, and we'll be starting shortly. Thank you so much.
Dentistry. As I finished high school and had two choices, one was dentistry and the other was building, and in fact my first choice was dentistry, believe it or not. My mother was a dentist. I think she was the first woman to get through Sydney Uni in dentistry in 1948, and so that was, as we say even today, it's mum who probably influences the kids more than anyone else. The second choice was building. I remember my father saying that everybody needs a roof over their house and of course renovations or new buildings, and so I didn't have enough, the high enough score to get into dentistry, so I was able to just scrape into building. And I undertook a Bachelor of Building degree at the University of New South Wales. But what got me to the Master Builders Association was that I did my thesis on industrial relations in the building industry, and it was the first student to actually venture outside the Faculty of Architecture to do such an elective course. When I joined the Master Builders in November 1982 as a trainee industrial relations officer, and didn't know what to expect, except that I'd had some experience, little, while I was researching my thesis on industrial relations. I'd interviewed people at the building unions, at the Master Builders, and a few other companies about their views on industrial relations at that time. The professor who marked my thesis on industrial relations said, "Look, I hear that the MBA is looking for a trainee. It might be something you apply for." And I remember to this day, that about a week before I actually, or a week after I'd had the interview with the MBA, and it was John Elder who interviewed me, that I received a phone call, and it was John Elder. We still have the phone, I might say, that I received that call. Not that I'm keeping it for that reason, but it's just we still have the phone. And he said the words, "Would you like to join us?" And I was absolutely sort of gobsmacked that I had received the call, and I stumbled out a yes. And then about 2 weeks later, I was in their office learning the ropes. And it was certainly the end of a process where I'd done a thesis on industrial relations in the industry, and wound up in the so-called dream job as the outcome. And interestingly, years on, I do remember that I interviewed from the Building Workers Industrial Union a fellow by the name of Stan Sharkey, who was the secretary of the state branch. And he said to me, "Look, had I known you would have gone to the MBA, I would have offered you a job working for the union." Now, again, that would have been an interesting exercise, because some of the university graduates like Andrew Ferguson actually ended up the BWIU at the time. That was how it was. I got a job in late '82 and have been here at the MBA ever since.
Hello everybody, my name is Megan Brummer and I'll be the celebrant for today. Please, can everybody who hasn't yet turned off their phone just do that now? Thank you. Welcome everybody. Each of you is here today because in some way or another Brian touched your life. We gather not only to honor his memory, but to share in the love and the humor, the kindness and the joy that he brought to all those around him. To begin Brian's memorial service, I would also like to acknowledge the distinguished guests who are joining us here today. Representing the government, we have the Honourable Stephen Camper and the Honourable Anilak Chantivong, Mr. Tim James, and Mr. James Sherrod. As we honour Brian's life, we reflect on the many roles that he played. To some, Brian was a brother, a father, a son, a husband. To others, an uncle. To many, Brian was a cherished friend. And to some, he was a very, very dear and irreplaceable friend. To most people, he was known as Brian, but he was also known as Briny or Muggs. And the unions used to call him the Mickey Mouse Kid. In order to celebrate Brian's life, we need to acknowledge his death, because it is that which brings us here today. Just before Christmas last year, Brian started having problems sleeping. And then while him and his family were on holiday in Noosa in January, he started having problems with his vision, which he put down to his glasses needing some adjusting. By the time they got home, Brian's condition had changed. And about a week later, he thought that he'd pulled a muscle or that one of his discs was playing up, at which point walking became quite difficult for him. On the 20th of January, after his first day back at work, Brian came home saying that he didn't feel so well and that he was going to take a few sick days off. Now, as many of you will know, Brian just wasn't one to miss a single day of work, even if he had to drag himself there. But as the week went on, he just wasn't getting any better, and so he and Donna went back to the doctor. This time, Brian was sent to see various specialists, and having found that Brian was suffering from an extremely rare and incurable condition that was affecting his nervous system, the specialist insisted that he be admitted to emergency immediately, to which Brian said, "No, I'm going home to see my dog, and I'll pack my bag, and I'll be back in the morning." And that night, on the 4th of February, Brian spent the night at home with Donna and his children and his dog Blue. And the next afternoon, he was admitted to the San Hospital in Wahroonga. Over the next 3 weeks, as his health declined rapidly, he was visited frequently by his family and by his closest friends. Amelia flew to Sydney from Melbourne, and the kids regularly came and went while Donna stayed with him from early morning to late at night. Apart from Donna and the kids and a couple of his closest family friends, no one knew just how serious his condition was. On his final day, the family spent all their time at the hospital with Brian as he lay in bed surrounded by the soft toys that the children had brought him. They played his favorite music, including songs like Ventura Highway, Tennessee Whiskey, and Elton John's Mona Lisa, while the kids took turns lying in bed with him, cuddling him, listening to his heart, listening to his breath. Later, when the kids went home, Donna stayed back, and about an hour later, she picked up his phone and she started going through his photos, reliving all the lovely times that they had shared together. Suddenly, something made her look up. She could sense that something was changing, and so she called the nurse. And as the nurse left to get the head nurse, Donna whispered into Brian's ear, "Don't go yet, sweetheart." Just then, Brian took his final breath. It was Saturday, the 1st of March at 9:45 p.m. Immediately, Donna called and messaged the kids to come back to the hospital. And there they told funny stories, and they cried, and they held him close, and they told him how much they love him. Brian didn't follow any one particular belief, but he had a deep curiosity about different philosophies and religions, and he loved to read. He loved to debate and to explore diverse perspectives. He also had no fear of death. And often he reassured his family that if illness ever came, he would not be a burden. You see, Brian had a plan. With his signature wit, he often joked that a wheelchair would be ready, proudly flying a skull and crossbones pirate flag as he took a grand and fearless leap into the unknown. I'd now like to invite Michael O'Donnell to say a few words.
Brian Seidler is an icon of our industry. Now, this title is too often used, and before I included it in this tribute, I went to the dictionary to look up the definition of what it meant to be referred to as an icon. According to the Webster Dictionary, an icon is a person widely admired, especially for having great influence or significance in a particular sphere. Now, this definition perfectly describes Brian and his influence, leadership, and unwavering dedication to the building and construction industry is what we're here to celebrate today. The Seidler name has long been associated with architecture, design, and quality construction. Brian was the younger cousin of architect Harry Seidler, Australia's father of modernism. Growing up in the home designed by Harry, Brian developed a deep appreciation for mid-century design. Later in life, he lovingly restored heritage homes, preserving architectural integrity with the same dedication he brought to his work in the construction industry. Brian devoted 40 years of his life to the Master Builders movement. He started in 1984 as a trainee industrial officer and later served as Executive Director of the Master Builders of New South Wales for 25 years. Brian played a crucial role in shaping policies, guiding industry standards, and navigating some of the construction industry's most challenging times. He was a man who brought people together by bridging divides between employers and workers, government and industry, unions and business owners alike. His tireless pursuit for fairness earned him the respect of all sides. Brian was well respected and admired by industry members, politicians from all parties, past and present staff members, and yes, even many union officials. Brian's contribution was widely recognised. In 2008, he was made a Fellow of the Australian Institute of Building, and in 2019, he was awarded a Member of the Order of Australia for his service to the construction industry. In October 2023, at the celebration of our 150th anniversary of the establishment of the Master Builders movement, right here on this very stage, it was my privilege to present Brian with our highest award for dedication and service, the Florence Taylor Award. Beyond his leadership, Brian will be remembered for his kindness and generosity, his championing of mental health in the industry, his commitment to training and education, his dedication to producing high-quality apprentices for industry, his advocacy for greater inclusion and opportunities for women in the construction industry, and his lifelong dedication to the Master Builders Association, its staff and members. Brian's influence and impact extended beyond the Master Builders. Brian served on numerous boards, including Chairman of Mates in Construction, whose work includes to reduce the suicide rates in our industry. Brian was a strong advocate for the Building Commission and the appointment of a Building Commissioner. The Building Commission is now improving standards right across our industry and is in the process of reducing red tape for builders through the merging of various government departments into the one instrumentality. Brian's work in industrial relations helped shape enterprise agreements, superannuation initiatives, and industry reforms that continue to benefit workers and businesses today. Brian's personal life was just as rich as his professional life. He met his life partner Donna at the MBA, and together they raised their three beautiful children, Amelia, Mila, and Marcus, all in the same home that he grew up in. He had an impish sense of humour. Impish is probably putting it a bit mildly. He had an impish, quirky sense of humour, an infectious passion for his work, and an unwavering commitment to the people around him. He was not just a leader, but a mentor, a friend, and a man who truly cared about making things better. Brian's legacy is not just in the policies he helped shape, but the people he inspired and the industry that he left significantly stronger than when he found it. Rest in peace, Brian, my mentor and friend.
I'd now like to invite Donna, Brian's wife, to share her tribute for Brian.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today for us. Over the past few weeks, as the children and I have navigated this difficult time, we've been surrounded by an outpouring of love, support, and kindness. So many of you here today have shared beautiful memories and stories about Brian, reminding us of the extraordinary person he was. We have felt every bit of it, your kind words, your flowers, your cards, your care packages, your dinners, and most importantly, your enduring friendship. Each gesture has been a comfort to our family in ways that words cannot fully express. I would particularly like to thank the Master Builders Association New South Wales, the MBA National Office, and industry stakeholders here today. Brian was born in Sydney on February 25, 1958, the second son of Marcus and Edith Seidler. He grew up in Wahroonga, where he attended Wahroonga Public School, affectionately known as the Bush School, where our kids went, North Sydney Boys High, and later studied a Bachelor of Building degree at the University of Sydney. Brian also studied languages at the University of Vienna. Throughout his life, he had a great love for music, particularly international or quirky pieces. He often discovered them on YouTube. I will miss hearing him tinker on our piano, working out how to play a new piece entirely by ear. My favourite moments were when Brian and the children would sit side by side playing duets together, whether that be chopsticks or more complicated pieces. Brian always had a strong passion for mid-century homes, particularly after growing up and living in one himself. He loved the challenge of restoring and carefully preserving every detail of the original design. Apart from home where he grew up, Brian was happiest in Thredbo. He loved the solace and the peace the mountains brought him, an opportunity to decompress, bond with the kids, and catch up with special friends. One of his favourite things was taking the chairlift to the top of Eagle's Nest. Coffee and donuts in hand, he'd signal to the operator, not stopping, not getting off. He was going around and around again, using the time to reflect and plan. Brian's contributions to the building industry were so significant that he was awarded an AM for his tireless work in making the industry a better place. The recognition initiated by his peers was a testament to the deep respect and admiration others had for him. But beyond his professional achievements, Brian's greatest love was our children, Amelia, Mila, and Marcus, closely followed by the family dog Blue. He was immensely proud of them all, always celebrating their unique strengths and qualities. He loved Amelia's fierce independence and unwavering determination, always urging her to pursue her dreams and follow her heart. He was in awe of Mila's tenacity and strength, often joking that he would send her in to take on the unions any day of the week. He loved her kindness and tenderness, which she showed in abundance. And Marcus, Brian treasured his compassionate nature, his empathetic spirit, his fairness and generosity, and his cheeky sense of humour. He saw so much of himself in his only son. Brian channeled his energy into supporting our children in whatever they loved doing. He would happily drive the kids and their friends across Sydney, backwards and forwards, always with a designated Macca's run on the way home, no matter what the hour. He loved listening to the banter during those journeys, calling it getting good intel. At other times, he could be seen driving our kids to sporting events far and wide. We once drove to Mittagong for Mila's early morning netball game, a 2.5-hour journey each way. Brian, with coffee in hand, would commentate the game, providing too much merriment that time in the morning. Then, without skipping a beat, we were back on the road again, racing back to Wahroonga for Marcus's midday soccer game. Brian would throw in his usual wisecracks if the game wasn't going our way, like shouting, "Ref, are you blind? That kid's got to at least be 40 years old. He's got a beard. Where's his birth certificate, ref?" Marcus at the time was playing in the under-12s. By the afternoon, Amelia's touch football game would be in full swing and Brian would still be full of energy, providing plenty of entertainment from the sidelines. He was always there for the kids, always present with love and dedication. Brian had a way of finding humour in even the most mundane situations. The house was filled with his wit and antics. It could be infuriating at times, but mostly cherished. The funny moments, the inappropriate jokes, the playful remarks, those are the memories the children and I will hold dear. So, as we say goodbye to Brian, let's remember the laughter, the love, the legacy he leaves behind. Brian, you were and are my best friend, my partner, my safe place, my home. I will carry you in my heart forever. I love you, sweetheart, now and always. Thank you. Oh,
God. Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name's Amelia, and I'm Brian's favourite firstborn. I want to take a moment to thank all of you for being here today to honour our dad. It's truly heartwarming to see the immense love and support that surrounds us here today. Dad had a remarkable ability to touch the lives of so many, so thank you for being here to celebrate his life and legacy. Anyway, joke's over, Dad. You can come home now. Mum and I have nearly blown up the house. You should have seen us try and change the pool filters the other week. That was disastrous. Dad, you accomplished so much in your life, and as you would all know, Dad was a true workaholic. He poured his heart into his career, tirelessly committed to improving the building industry. 40 years of dedication. MBA, you have the privilege of knowing my dad longer than I ever will. You're a part of his life, a part of his identity, and you're a part of every single family holiday. Uninvited, we could never escape you. But Dad wouldn't have it any other way. The love and commitment and dedication he had for the building industry was truly inspiring. In 2019, Dad received Member of the Order of Australia in recognition of his immense contributions to the building industry. It was one of my most proudest moments, and as I've grown older, I've come to appreciate just how special and incredible that achievement is. Dad, we are beyond proud of you. Although Dad evidently excelled at his work, I think one of his proudest moments had nothing to do with awards or praise, but it was instead the time he went viral on TikTok. I'm sure a good amount of you would have seen or heard from Brian himself about his viral video. This video was of him meeting my dog for the first time, or in his words, his dog. A quick backstory, I bought a beautiful German pointer named Blue without telling either of my parents. It's still a touchy subject, sorry Mum. Once this video went viral, Dad suddenly became obsessed with TikTok content. Brian, he would brainstorm new ideas every single night. He even started calling himself an influencer. He found out that the local barista had even seen the video. That to Dad was apparently a whole new level of fame. Brian knew exactly what he was going to do with his retirement, become a full-time social media content creator and influencer. Dad, your outrageous sense of humour was something everyone who met you felt deeply. It's hard to put into words the kind of humour you had. Unmatched, unhinged at times, and absolutely unforgettable. There'll never be another Mr. Brian Seidler. You were truly one of a kind. Dad, as I watched you fight this horrible sickness, I never truly believed it would actually take you away. Never imagined I'd be standing up here at 23. We're too young to lose you, Dad. You were too young to leave us. You were our home, our rock, the foundation of our family. There was still so much we were meant to achieve together, so much more I had to learn from you. Dad, I promise to keep Mum, Mila and Marcus safe and to be their biggest cheerleader, just like you always were. I promise to love Mum unconditionally the way you did, to love her twice as hard from the both of us. And I promise to make you the proudest. Your love will always be my compass, guiding me as I navigate this life I have ahead without you, carrying me the lessons and strength you've given me. It was a privilege to have you as my dad and to spend the best 23 years of my life with you. Anyone who had the honour of knowing you was truly lucky. Dad, I hope you're up there now, speeding around in your 911 Porsches, or maybe a Land Cruiser, a donut in hand and a boot full of German pointers in the back brainstorming your next TikTok. I will love you forever, Dad. Please look after us. And just like you always said to me every morning before work, be strong. I love you. See you soon. To my beautiful Dada. I can't believe your life was cut short and that I'm standing here speaking about you just at 18 years old. There are so many things I'm going to miss about you, but most of all, your sense of humour. You had a way of turning any dull or sad moment into laughter within seconds. And I know I'm not the only one who saw this because you took every opportunity to embarrass me no matter where I was. At the time, I hated it, but now I'm so grateful you did because I get to stand here and share some of the funniest memories we had together. About a year and a half ago, when I just started dating my boyfriend George, we went out to dinner. It was still early in our relationship, and I was a little shy and nervous around him. The night was going well until Dad decided to track my location, find the restaurant, and sneak in. He convinced the manager to let him pretend to be our waiter. Out of the corner of my eye, I suddenly saw him walking over, balancing a tray of our pizza and drinks, wearing a tiny apron. I wanted to cry of embarrassment. Poor George was so confused, and I had to explain to him, please don't be alarmed, this is just Brian. Looking back, it's one of the funniest memories I have of him. Another time, I was out at a club with my best friend Sophie in India, having a great time. It was getting late, and I was ready to go home, so I called Dad to let him know I was coming back. He told me, wait right there, and hung up. About 30 minutes later, at 2 a.m., he pulled up in front of the club with his best mate Blue, our pointer dog, sitting in the front seat with her head hanging out the window. I wasn't expecting this at all. When I opened the door, he looked at me and said, get in the back, Blue has priority. Okay. One of the last proper lunches we had together, just the two of us, wasn't too long ago. Anyone who knew Dad knew that he could start a conversation with anyone. That day, he ordered a classic fish and chips, then completely seriously called the waitress over and asked if his fish was grain-fed. She looked confused, not knowing how to respond, while I just looked at her and said, please ignore him. At my job, Harris Farm, Dad loved to come in just to stir me up. He would either buy a single strand of coriander or a bag of air, nothing else. He did this so often that I started expecting it. Around Christmas time, he held up the checkout line, which was already wrapped around the store, just to mess with me. One of my managers finally had to tell him to stop. If he wasn't buying something ridiculous, he was wandering around the store with a plastic bag over his head, pretending to suffocate himself. These are just a few of the million of hilarious memories I have of my dad. Dad, even though you are not physically here, I know you will always be with me wherever I go. As I've grown up, I've realized how much effort and love you put into our family, and I promise to make you proud every single day. And when I have a family of my own, I will work just as hard as you did to give them the same love and connection we shared. You were and are my biggest inspiration, Dad. I will carry your humour, your kindness, and your love for your family with me throughout my whole life. It's not fair that you're gone and I have to live without you for the rest of my life. But I know you'll always be by my side, guiding me through everything. I miss you so much. I love you more than words can say. Love you always, from your favourite child, Mills.
My time with you has been cut short. 17 years was only just the start. Your knowledge and guidance have shaped me in so many ways, from teaching me how to ride a bike to showing me how to make a cheese toastie, or teaching me how to drive the giant Brado, and showing me what type of man I want to be. You always made sure us kids got home safe, even if that meant picking us up 2 hours away at midnight. You would never let me go to bed hungry, even though you couldn't cook. Dad's specialty was cheese toastie, oily pasta, or baked beans from a can. It would normally end up with us going late night Macca's runs. You were my number one supporter, Dad, always there for me every single basketball game and football game. I don't think you ever missed one. Dad, you were the funniest person I knew, no matter what the situation was. You always found a way to make people laugh, whether it was a joke, a funny comment, or just the way you saw the world. You were able to lift the mood at any time. I love watching you make other people laugh. It was your own special gift. Seeing the joy you brought to people was one of my favourite things. I'm going to miss the mornings where you demand me to give my croissant to feed it to our dog Blue, because apparently it's her croissant and Blue has priority over everyone. I'll miss going to Threadbow with you, especially when you watch us on the inflatables in the aquatic centre, and you would laugh your head off watching after it was your turn to go on the race, even though you would always just fall off at the start. There are no words to describe how I'm feeling. I was meant to have my whole life with you, Dad. I promise to make the best version of myself. I continue to live and honour you. I'll miss you more than ever. I love you, Dad.
To honour and silently celebrate Brian's life, we'll watch a slideshow of pictures, which Brian's daughter Amelia put together so beautifully. The song that we'll play at this time is Mona Lisa and Mad Hatters by Elton John, one of Brian's favourites. During this time, you may want to hold Brian in your heart and send him your love or a silent prayer. Honourable Stephen Camper, please could you share a few words with us?
Friends, today we gather to honour and celebrate the life of Brian Seidler, a man whose unwavering dedication, sharp intellect and compassionate spirit left an indelible mark on the building and construction industry and on all who had the privilege to know him. It is with the heaviest of hearts I stand before you today. Not as a minister, but as a friend of Brian's for over 30 years. Words cannot truly express his loss to our society. We feel his absence so profoundly because his presence was felt by so many. A timeless character, a real original. I remember him in his retro outfits, and which all went out of fashion a couple of times during the course of our friendship. Come in and out of fashion. He was unapologetic, he was fair, but above all, he was sincere. I recall my first encounter with Brian back in the 90s. I just launched an industry insurance scheme and I was engaging with the CFMEU. Brian issued a memorandum by facsimile advising employers to be wary of me. He labelled me a union stooge. I immediately looked up the definition of stooge in the Oxford Dictionary. Let me assure you, the definition was not complimentary, and I took great offence. So I called Brian to complain. I don't know how, but I knew that on the other end of the line, Brian was grinning from ear to ear. His response, "I thought that might grab your attention." And then without missing a beat, he invited me to lunch at a cafe near the MBA offices. I later learned from past victims that this was a classic Brian technique. And I saw it on show time and time again. He had the uncanny ability to enter an adversarial setting, and in an instant, he would fire up and start throwing out accusations, all guns blazing. It didn't matter who was in the room, everyone copped a stray. And yet, a few hours later, he'd be sitting down to lunch with the very people he was just arguing with, laughing as if they were lifelong friends. That was the magic of Brian. He got away with it every time, because even though he had just been arguing with you for the last few hours, everyone, without failure, they knew Brian cared more about the welfare of the construction industry than anyone. When you boil it down, it was his care for people, the genuine personal way he connected with others that made him stand out. He was a small, compact little guy, but with the biggest of hearts. And while the industry evolved around him, Brian remained timeless. For the last 30 plus years, Brian has been the ballast of the construction industry, the steadying hand in times of uncertainty. It didn't matter the situation, whether it was royal commissions, inquiries or major disputes, he was always on the front line. We could always rely on Brian to pick up the pieces and move us forward towards a better path. It is hard to imagine what this industry will look like without Brian. But I know that his work, his presence and his achievements will continue to shape the sector for years to come. Not many understood the prominence, the importance and the needs of the industry quite like Brian. His leadership was instrumental during times of economic uncertainty, including the COVID-19 pandemic. He fought tirelessly to keep construction sites operational so businesses could remain solvent, so that thousands of workers could continue providing for their families, so the industry could live to fight another day. Brian's impact extended far beyond boardrooms and policy meetings. He was a man of deep humility, a collaborator who earned the respect and admiration of peers and colleagues alike. He would work hand in hand with anyone who had the best wishes of the industry at heart. Brian would always think outside of the box. During the late 90s, he did the unthinkable. He had the MBA joint venture with rivals, CFMEU, to assist industry in a variety of initiatives: worker training centres, assistance for long-term unemployed, delivering for injured workers, rehab, and drug and alcohol rehab service. Brian championed an even playing field in the industry for employers. He also had a passion to foster the next generation of the industry through apprenticeships. He was instrumental in shaping and coordinating industry capacity to deliver the complex Olympics projects. He didn't need to do these things. He did it because he knew it would make a difference. He did it because he cared. Brian was more than a leader. He was the industry's coordinator. We will remember him not just for what he accomplished, but for the way he made us feel valued, supported. He took us all with him. He loved the industry. No one could deny that. But outside of his character, Brian evolved later in life. He found his ultimate love, his love for his family. For the last 15 or so years, Brian and I had a tradition. On the last day of work before the Christmas break, we would call each other. And we did every single year, even last Christmas. No matter how busy we were, no matter what was happening in our lives, that call was a tradition we never broke. And our calls used to be about the industry. We reflected fondly on the past. But over time, this changed. In recent years, he increasingly spoke about his family, his wonderful wife, Donna, and his children, who he was so proud of, Amelia, Mila, and Marcus. He achieved a lot in his life. But there is no doubt in my mind that he holds his family as his greatest work. I'm going to miss our chats, Chief. Rest in peace, Brian. You were truly one of a kind, and you will never, ever be forgotten.
In October 2023, MBA celebrated their 150-year anniversary. And because it was a celebration very close to Brian's heart, he did everything in his power to make it the landmark event that it deserved to be. During the creation of the event, MBA spoke to many people, and in these conversations, there was one recurring theme: Brian. Brian's lifetime of dedication is woven into the modern history of the MBA. He has been there through the tough times, the lean times, the challenging times, and he has helped herald in the good times. Unprompted and unscripted, here are some of the stories told about Brian in the lead up to the 150-year celebrations.
Working with Brian Seidler, definitely an experience. When he first attended for the interview, we had Ansit carpet upstairs, the striped, diagonal stripes, and he walked in with his overalls and his boots, and he left marks all over the carpet walking in. He certainly made an impression.
And he was put on as a trainee industrial officer. At that stage, he was doing his degree, and as part of his degree, he was supposed to go and work for different organisations, and he was working for Civil and Civic and as part and parcel of his course.
We employed him. I found him completely loyal. Whenever I had a meeting with staff and I asked for volunteers for anything, he'd put his hand up. He had his own style. That's a good thing about Brian. I have seen a lot of people work as industrial officers and fall flat on their face because they try and emulate somebody else's style. He had his own style. He had his own style of negotiation. I mean, nobody else would take the ribbing that he gave some union organisers that he did.
Brian's first day when he walked into the office at Glebe, that's where he first started. He came for the interview at Newtown, but he came into Glebe for his first day. And as soon as he walked through the door, I recognised him and I said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And when he told me, I thought, "Oh my God, we're in trouble. This is it." But it all worked out in the end because he was good at his job. He had an affinity with the unions back then because he worked very well with them, though I don't think they knew how to take him. I think half the time they weren't sure what he was trying to say to them, but I think they got the gist of it. So he held his own, let's put it that way. He did very well.
Well, as I've said to Brian, you're a better executive director than you were ever when you were working for me as a manager of because he was a larrikin. He used to put vines up in his office, and he'd have these pot plants, and the vines would grow and you had to duck your head to get into his office, and that sort of stuff. And he was the most disrespectful person you've ever came across. He always called me Mr. Elder, but he was still disrespectful. And the union used to love it when he called me that because they used to get the giggles. And he used to embarrass me. And I used to say, "Well, you knock it off." And he says, "Well, no." When we'd go to a meeting, yeah. And Mr. Elder said, and they'd laugh. And yeah, no, he was quite funny. But he has been very good. I'm quite proud of him, actually.
And he used to wear a Mickey Mouse watch. So they used to call him the Mickey Mouse Kid. As I said to you, he's a larrikin. He can't help himself. We had all these people trying to break the glass doors to come in. The police were circulating. The boss was on the phone. Media were ringing, the whole works. And there's Brian and a couple of the others throwing water bombs at them down there. That's Brian.
I first met Brian in the early 80s, and if you didn't, when I first met him, you didn't know him, so he was jokingly some minute and dead serious the others. He could handle his way around a union delegate and then make a joke in the same sentence and put them down. Forever a happy-go-lucky gentleman, and always had a story or a yarn in a speech, a serious speech that would come along, and he'd put a joke in there about a particular person or a particular event.
The first day I ever met Brian Seidler was the Industrial Commission over in William Street, and we had an issue with enterprise bargaining agreements. We had the unions at the time were, nearly trying to enforce us and make us comply. So we went into the Industrial Commission, and that was the day I met Brian. And Brian Seidler, in his colourful ways, he was an industrial officer at the time. He charismatically spoke to the Commissioner, everyone around, and he helped us resolve our EBA so it got ratified to this day. And from then on, I was sold.
My first involvement with Brian Seidler was through industrial relations, and he was a big help in the late 80s, in the 90s. In fact, we used to call him Freedom Fighter #1, because he'd come down there and be on the front line with us trying to bat back the union's demands, and he loved it. He genuinely loved it.
I've known Brian since he was in IR and has obviously worked his way up to become the beast that he is today. He's a fantastic man and a fantastic person that's involved in the building industry. The floor, obviously, is always being late. Brian does. I remember filling in early days for Brian at a Northern Suburbs divisional meeting. I think I was crapping my pants a bit because we was Gladys Berejiklian when she was Transport Minister, and Brian was meant to be there to introduce her. And you know, Brian being Brian, I think I got a phone call saying I've just left the office, and you know, she'd just arrived, so I had to do all the introductions and chair the meeting when Brian was meant to be doing it. So anyway, I'm sure everyone's got a story of Brian being late and putting you on the spot.
His only problems are speeding. He would speed to wherever he got to, and he was always late arriving wherever he was going to get to. Those were his two problems, but completely loyal.
He drove fast, he was late for meetings, his office was like a bomb hit it, but a very likeable man and had the interest of the MBA at heart forever and a day.
Yeah, with Brian's driving, you try not to get in the car with him too much because he drives too fast. He's not in the Porsches now, he's in the Prada or the Toyota Land Cruiser. But he's got a great collection of tyres and wheels down in the basement of the head office. So if anyone ever needs to borrow some tyres, just give reception a call and we'll be happy to get rid of them.
Danita, if you could come on the stage now, please.
Thank you. Brian's intelligence, his deep-seated sense of family, integrity, loyalty and values, and his experiences throughout his 42-year career with Master Builders Association of New South Wales, through its highs and its lows, all shaped his leadership of this august organisation. I think we've all heard that Brian was a charismatic leader, which is defined by a leader's ability to inspire and motivate through charm, strong communication, empathetic, confident, and with a compelling vision, usually leading to a sense of purpose and passion within the group. Brian had all of those attributes in spades, but maybe we would add unconventional and idiosyncratic. More on this later. Before we turn to his time as Executive Director, we cannot forget the formative years of Brian's time with Master Builders, where he fought in the industrial relations trenches for 17 years. Although he would no doubt scold me for saying that, as he never really left those trenches. The scars of those industrial relations battles were constantly at the forefront of his thinking. But why? Fundamentally, Brian was driven to uphold the values of Master Builders and acted to ensure that its foundations never weakened. Brian constantly reminded us that industrial relations is the core function of Master Builders as registered industrial employer organisations, which occurred in New South Wales in 1902. Brian worked through the 1980s deregistration of the BLF, the Giles Royal Commission of 1992, the Cole Royal Commission of 2001, and the Hayden Royal Commission of 2015. All history repeating itself again and again. A constant reminder to him of the lawlessness in the industry and why he needed to continue his drive for change to the benefit of all in this sector. This is why Brian never gave up, and even with the CFMEU in administration after the recent Building Bad series, he was adamant that change that he'd been fighting so hard for in over 40 years maybe had a chance. So he continued to pursue that change right to the end, where we continued phone calls despite his illness. So we all, at Master Builders owe it to him to continue that fight for a lawful, productive and ethical industry. Brian's time as Executive Director was relentless, not only at a state level but also at a national level. He represented his state with vigour and persistence on all issues, but the ones that stand out, of course, are industrial relations, building regulation, apprentices, and of course, industry uplift. Some found his pursuit frustrating, but Brian pressed on. He would sometimes express that he was perplexed why others were not as committed. Why weren't others just as driven as he was in upholding the rights of members? He said in a 2017 speech, and I quote, "You can only truly service your members by having a deep and abiding understanding of the industry and the members you serve. What does not work for associations is failing to understand or abandoning their core services for which members join and remain joined to the association." What is clear throughout his tenure as ED was that he was not only defending the interests of members, but also defending the core values of Master Builders. He was always reminding us of our duty to the cause. So let's now turn to those personality traits that made Brian stand out and be that charismatic leader of Master Builders. The Brian we adored and were frustrated with all at the same time. The traits that collectively created an environment at Master Builders New South Wales that enabled financial stability, staff loyalty, and pursuing members' interests based on strong, consistent values. First and foremost, his charm and empathy. He had charm in spades, and when he turned it on, it was genuine. It was never superficial. That was the great thing about Brian. There was never any pretense. You knew exactly where you stood with him. Brian's care for his staff is legendary. His support during tough personal times showed the softer side of Brian, a truly empathetic individual. The stories staff have shared since his passing all reflect his support of them, and in some instances he went to great personal lengths to undertake that support. His empathetic side is also very evident in his commitment to mental health, the wellbeing of apprentices, and encouraging more women into the industry. Then, of course, there's that idiosyncratic side of Brian. The Brian undoubtedly had an unconventional style. There are so many stories, and perhaps many of them not appropriate for a memorial service at the town hall, but it would be remiss not to tell a few. On one occasion, he attended a CFMEU office with a member to negotiate an enterprise agreement. At the beginning of the meeting, Brian produced a large jar of Vaseline. He declared, and I'm not going to actually use the words that he used because I don't think it's appropriate today, that he anticipated the union's response and that the Vaseline would be more than likely most helpful as negotiations progressed. As you saw from the photo, the crazy overflowing office that you could not walk through without tripping over piles of papers, flags, photos, knickknacks and boxes, the team tell the story that Brian would regularly have numerous devices going on at once to enable him to be on multiple video conferences at the same time while still taking a phone call and talking to the staff. And of course, constantly being late to a meeting. Arriving with much fanfare in those bloody dark glasses with some quip. His tenacity to never let go of an issue, with the delivery of his message punctuated with a lot of swearing, morphing into various characters and occasionally some really strange noises. His quirky humour was also always perfectly timed, although not necessarily perfectly PC. Our meetings don't feel the same, and our days are now void of those multiple conversations, with the constant reminder from Brian that we need to keep on the path of doing our job, to represent our members and not to deviate from the cause. We take this opportunity to thank his family, Donna, Amelia, Mila and Marcus. we thank you so much for sharing him with the Master Builders family. And to Brian, thank you. Thank you for 42 years of unrelenting, self-sacrificing commitment to Master Builders. It was simply extraordinary. Thank you.
Over to David Chandler.
Wow. He'd even be embarrassed to be late today, wouldn't he? Look, it's a privilege for me. I think I'm the only industry person who's going to say a few words today, but I hope I can bring this home with a slightly different angle to where we've been to date. I think we can all agree that Brian was a master builder with a reputation for making things better. He was all of that, and you've heard that reinforced over and over today. His family and friends and colleagues, and many indeed who have not met him, will now understand the achievements and the legacy of this man. Today's a sad day, but it's also a proud day. It's also time to reflect on how special Brian was. Donna, Amelia, Mila and Marcus, I got to speak to him a lot of weekends, and I know he was doing exactly what you were saying. Brian's family were always at the heart of his purpose and his life. But for those of you who are not family and friends, you will have heard of his selflessness and his dedication to give our industry and the broader community. He was a true public servant. So you don't have to work for government to be a public servant. Brian was that. He had an enduring capacity to stay connected with what was important and how he could make a difference. And today you will have heard of many examples. I recently commented that at these times we often learn more about our mates after they've passed. And this caused me to reflect on the thought that we should spend more time with our mates while they are with us. Brian was such a mate. Our paths have crossed over many years. His career started as a cadet, about 8 years behind mine, and I started as an apprentice cadet. So we've intersected over many, many years. But I got to know Brian more before I was appointed as New South Wales Building Commissioner, and we were both adjunct professors at Western Sydney University. His unreserved resolve to make this industry better stood out at every juncture. He took no convincing whatsoever to throw his full weight behind the establishment of the Centre for Smart and Modern Construction at Western Sydney University. Today, I can report to you that that support's making a huge impact on modernising course content, supporting new research, and helping students to prepare for a changing industry that's reshaping on a daily basis. Our mateship lifted to a higher level in 2019, just after my appointment as New South Wales Building Commissioner. Mateship's built on trust and having each other's back. And Brian had the backs of all of his members and the wider community that depends on a trustworthy built-in environment, all the while leading one of the state's most important industry associations. But he always took on the wider dimension of care for those that making buildings touched. He respected the clients, the contractors, the designers, the managers, the tradespeople, the manufacturers, the academics, the regulators, the policymakers, and especially consumers. Indeed, for all of those who make up the broad tapestry that is our industry, it was Brian's care that shone through. An early building commissioner encounter with Brian was him reaching out with a dilemma that one of his members had.
The member had witnessed serious defects in a new building and had been threatened by the head contractor to keep quiet. Brian wanted to protect his member while surfacing a situation that became a regular feature of the New South Wales building reforms to follow. The first sunshine on this type of toxic situation, and it was new to us both. Brian carried the weight of many toxic situations that have and continue to harm our industry. Today is not a day about expanding on these, while many remain work to do. His role was to ensure that New South Wales MBA could contribute without ever overstepping, to stay in all of the important conversations, and to be respectful and never leave the room. He had this unique skill to manage the art of the possible while not putting the next day at risk. His many achievements have been acknowledged today, so I'm not going to list those. I want to finish by just simply saying that we formed a very special mateship in recent years. I got to see firsthand the breadth of the hundreds of people that he looked out for and reached out to support. Today we've heard of his dedication to mates in construction and in supporting the next generation of constructors and honouring their achievements, especially women. But you should know that he also helped get the New South Wales building reforms and its commissioner across the line. In fact, his support in achieving this is amongst his reported reflections. For me, however, it was the Friday afternoon calls, every Friday afternoon, to see if I was okay. He was always there to lend an ear, to check and console and help where he could. And I sometimes rang him to see how he was going, especially during the recent CFMEU turmoil. I rang him on the morning that Donna and Brian checked into the sand. I was in regular contact with a few of his closest mates as they all rallied together with their concern for Brian and his family and his work colleagues, because I know that the devastation that occurred in the office at the MBA was quite extraordinary. People in the office could not imagine a day where Brian Seidler didn't come through the door. But I hadn't been aware of the many personal interests Brian had, so today I continue to learn more about him. I noticed that, in fact, he was a member of the Scouting movement. And I reflected my own time there and looked back on a text and found the reasoning why Robert Baden-Powell founded Scouting. It was for the purpose of contributing to the education of young people, fostering their physical, intellectual, emotional, social and spiritual development, and encourage them to become responsible citizens and members of their communities, to be their best self. I believe that same purpose was evidenced in Brian's commitment to helping grow and progress the next generation of constructors. This was true of Brian in every way, and we saw that in him conducting that throughout his entire career. Brian was truly a master builder with a reputation for getting things done, for getting things and making them better. So Brian, we'll always remember you, and we will be proud of you. Thank you, mate. Perhaps what we all might do, though, is to commit to knowing our mates better. Thank you.
The poem that I'm about to read you is a beautiful reflection on how life and love continue beyond what we can see or touch. I invite you to listen to this poem with open hearts as I read this. It is called Death is Nothing at All, and it was written by Henry Scott Holland. Death is nothing at all. It does not count. I have only slipped away into the next room. Nothing has happened. Everything remains exactly as it was. I am I and you are you, and the old life that we lived so fondly together is untouched and unchanged. Whatever we were to each other, that we still are. Call me by the old familiar name. Speak of me in the easy way in which you always used. Put no difference in your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at the little jokes we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word it always was. Let it be spoken without effort, without the ghost of shadow upon it. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. There is absolute and unbroken continuity. What is this death but a negligible accident? Why should I be out of mind because I am out of sight? I am but waiting for you for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well. Nothing is hurt. Nothing is lost. One brief moment and all will be as it was before. How we shall laugh at the trouble of parting when we meet again. And now we'll play one more slideshow of Brian's life.
Brian Seidler, and that says it all.
When we love someone deeply, it's so hard to put into words how much they mean to us. The love, the humor, the kindness and warmth that Brian has brought into your lives will never fade. His presence will be felt in your hearts and in your memories and in the love that you continue to share. And now the song Tennessee Whiskey, another one of Brian's favorites, will play in his memory. The song will mark the end of today's memorial. After this, you're invited to stay back and to share your stories and to support one another and to celebrate his life together. On behalf of the family, thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. Your love and your presence mean so very, very much. Thank you.